What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. So you guys know I follow Congress, I follow these lawmakers, and sometimes I really get the feeling that you have lawmakers that they just want chaos all the time. They don't want to get anything done. They just want to create problems and not even solve the problems, just create problems and then blame someone else for the problems that they've created. And so I'm going to talk today about the House of Representatives. So Speaker Johnson, a few days ago, he passed a bill. So he brought a bill to the floor for aid for Israel. Now, I don't want to just talk about the funding for Israel. I want to talk about just the dysfunction of getting to this point. And I'm going to walk you guys through this whole thing because it's just chaotic. This is not the time for us to have a chaotic Congress because we have so much stuff that's on the line right now. We have to pass a bill so we won't have a government shutdown in 10 days. We're looking at chaos going on all over the world, and we could get pulled into one of these conflicts. Do we have a Congress that's functional enough to protect us in a time of need if we need to send troops to the Middle East or if we need to send troops to Taiwan or anywhere? Do we have a Congress that is functional enough to protect us? And so that's what I really want to focus on in this video. Okay, so let's start from the very beginning. And I have an illustration here to kind of highlight exactly where we are, how we got to this point. So a few weeks ago, President Biden asked for $106 billion for Israel, Ukraine, and national security, the U.S. national security. So part of this money was going to go towards us building up, rebuilding up our stockpile because we had a stockpile. We sent some of our weapons to Ukraine, and so we need to restock. So that's part of where that money needs to go, as well as providing protection on the southern border. You have Republicans out there right now saying that we need to do something about the southern border. We need to do something about the southern border. This package, $106 billion, some of that money was going to go to the border. And so what happened? What we saw was Speaker Johnson say, okay, we'll go ahead and pass a bill. We're going to pass a bill for $14 billion. And that's money for Israel. So aid for Israel. However, we're not going to address the other money right now. We're just going to do a standalone bill for Israel. And the kicker was that we're going to take the money from the IRS. So we're going to take money from a government agency, a U.S. government agency, and send that money to Israel. That's what Speaker Johnson wants to do. And so the interesting part when it comes to taking this $14 billion from the IRS, the federal government has one way of collecting money, and that is through the IRS. That is through your taxes. That's how we fund all the stuff that we have now, where it's coming from the IRS. And so why would you take money from the IRS when that is a means of bringing money into the federal government? You're talking about deficits. You're talking about the $33 trillion in debt that we're in. The IRS is collecting money that would help pay down that debt. But, of course, we need lawmakers that don't overspend. And lawmakers on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, they spend the same. So you can't just look at Democrats and say, oh, they spend too much, they spend too much. Republicans spend just as much. If you look at former President Trump's administration, spent $8 trillion in 4 years. Obama spent a little over $8 trillion in 8 years. So on average, former President Trump was spending $2 trillion a year while he was president. And when I say he's spending, I'm talking about Congress. He's signing off on the bills, but Congress is passing these bills. And so politicians on both sides, they love to spend money when they're in power. Now, when they're not in power, then there's this problem. We're spending too much money. We need cuts here. We need cuts there. But anyway, getting back to this illustration. They want to take money from the IRS, so take $14 billion from the IRS to send to Israel. Doesn't sound like a good deal to me, especially when the IRS, they're collecting money for the federal government. It makes no sense at all. But The kicker here is they did a standalone bill. A standalone bill, instead of just incorporating that $106 billion, just do it all at once. That way you would have money for national security, something that we really need and something that we need more of now because of the conflicts all over the world. But no, we're going to do a standalone bill. And are we going to talk to Leader Schumer in the Senate? Are we going to talk to him before we pass this bill? No, we're not going to do that. We're just going to pass the bill, and they're just going to have to deal with it in the Senate. And so, of course, the Senate says, no, we're not going for that. That's just not going to happen. And so now we're at a stalemate. So now the Senate's going to have to create their own bill. And so the Senate will create a bill, and they'll go ahead and send it back over to the Speaker to see if he approves it. Of course, Schumer's not going to talk to Speaker Johnson beforehand either. And so that's the dysfunction that I'm talking about here. Because it's easy. You pick up the phone, you call the other leader, you say, look, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Do you think you can get the votes for this? And they'll say yes or they'll say no. But at least you're talking back and forth. They don't even do that. They just pass bills on their own and then think, okay, well, hopefully if they don't like it, then they'll just do something else and then they'll send it back to us and we'll just keep going back and forth, back and forth. We don't have time for that. Like I said, $106 billion, but you have money going to our national security. That is important. Okay, you can take out the money for Ukraine, take out the money for Israel. We need to have money for our own national security because we're at a crucial time. We already heard the FBI director just last week say that we need to be vigilant because we could see an attack in the U.S. And I don't know if our Congress is able to deal with that right now. We have a split amongst Republicans. We have a split amongst Democrats. We don't have leaders talking to each other to try to pass bills. We're in a real bad situation. A real bad situation when it comes to Congress. And I don't think it's going to get better anytime soon. Now, let me go further here. When it comes to the collection, the IRS, we're going to talk a little bit more about the IRS. Currently, the tax gap, which is the amount in taxes that are owed but not paid, comes to nearly $7 trillion over a decade. $7 trillion over a decade. 3/5 of the tax gap is due to underreporting of income by the top 10% of taxpayers, and more than a quarter comes from the top 1%. So think about this. $7 trillion over 10 years, over a decade. That you could be collecting that money. That money could be going to pay down our debt. You can also have extra money to go to other programs like Social Security that really needs help right now, needs reform. But what do you have? You have lawmakers that are saying, you know what? Let's take more money from the IRS. They're still upset because of the money that went to the IRS in the Inflation Reduction Act. They're still upset about that. 87,000 new agents. And they didn't say that's over 10 years. But yes, more IRS agents means that you'll be able to collect more revenue. Now, look, there's another, and I think I got this on the Washington Post, and this was an opinion piece, but it makes a lot of sense. It makes more sense when you consider that every additional dollar invested in the IRS generates $6 in return. So when you invest $1, you get $6 in return. So if you're investing in an IRS agent, you're going to get a better return than your investment. That's what we want. And I know some people are scared. They're thinking, well, they're going to be looking at me. You know, I don't make that much money, and they're going to be coming after me for taxes. Their focus is that 10% and that 1%. The people that are really getting away without paying taxes at all. And should those people have to pay their fair share? I would say yes. The only reason they don't pay their fair share is because they have creative accountants, people who are able to figure out how to send money to different places and buy different things so they don't have to pay taxes. Is that fair for the American people? No. But when we look at the situations that we're in and the fact that we're in all this debt and we need to get out of this debt, you need to look at every avenue. And that's an avenue that's not being explored. Why is it not being explored? Because lawmakers, they're bought off by these billionaires. That's the reality. And so lawmakers don't even want to touch that. And you'll know the lawmakers, they've been talking about this ever since they passed the Inflation Reduction Act. Ever since they found out that that money was going to the IRS, they said, oh, no, we can't have money going to the IRS. That's the way we collect money. We can't have money going there. I mean, it makes no sense. But the reason why they're against that is because these billionaires are taking care of them. And so now they're saying, hey, we can't have that happen. We can't raise taxes on wealthy people. That's not fair to them, when we know how things go when it comes to taxes. And we know that the middle class carries the biggest brunt of paying taxes. We know that. Now, of course, if you're a billionaire, your tax bill might be a little bit higher, or maybe even a lot higher. But when you look at the percentage of the taxes that you're paying, that's where it differs. That's where, a person that's making $50,000, if they have to pay $5,000 in taxes, that percentage is higher. Whereas if you look at a billionaire, they might be paying 1% of the total money that they brought in that year. And so I'm really concerned. I'm really concerned when it comes to our Congress right now. And we have a speaker that has no experience. He's been in Congress since 2016, never held a leadership role, but now he's second in line to the president. And he's going to have to make some very serious decisions in the coming months. And one of those decisions could be a war in the Middle East. And as a leader, is he going to be able to bring people together in order to fund a war? Because Congress, they carry the purse. They decide where the money goes. It's not the president. And so if the president wants to send troops, he can send troops to a conflict, but Congress is going to have to declare war. Do we have a Congress that can get on board and say, okay, we're going to go to war and we're going to have this funding go towards that war? Do we have a Congress that can do that? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but I want you guys to let me know in the comments below. But when we're looking at this, I just wanted to show you just an illustration of how dysfunctional it is. You have the president asking for $106 billion, and you have the Speaker of the House not even talking to the president, just creating his own bill, $14 billion. This is where it's going to go, and it's going to come from our own government agency, which is ridiculous in my opinion. You're going to take money from our own departments and send them to another country. Let me know what you guys think down below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.